back to another week of shows. I'm going to start with Peter Watkins. I did one or two videos a few weeks ago, which was Culloden and the War Game. I'm going to continue doing more videos about Peter Watkins films. These are all excellent films, and they tend to be undervalued and overlooked, and that's a real shame because he's one of the best British directors around. There's a really terrific, as you can see here, Blu-ray, DVD Blu-ray from Eureka, which gives you a DVD and a Blu-ray of a booklet and some nice extras when you get introduction, your commentaries. But most importantly, you get the film. The film with this is really, really an important film. This is one of my favourite Peter Watkins films. Apart from the other ones, because most of his films are terrific. Most of his films are really wonderful. This one is directly about America. I mean, a lot of his films are about power and how people are overrun by power and how people can behave savagely. And it's not in a didactic way. He actually looks at how people behave in groups and how people are. It's even a bit unsentimental way. How people can be pretentious. How people can be lack forward thinking. How people can believe what they're told, even though they shouldn't. Does all of that stuff, but he usually does it. He's done it a bit Culloden. He's done it about the nuclear industry and what happens when nukes go off. But as he went further on, he started to look into how America directly affected the world. So start off in Privilege, is a film I'm going to cover soon, all about the pop industry and how that basically makes the masses. It gives the masses something to hook on to, so they don't think too much. And now Punishment Park looks at what happens when the masses do not fall for that. What happens when they rebel, when they think that this has gone too far. Now, this is a film made during the Nixon administration, during the Vietnam War, but it could cover anywhere. It could cover any administration. And it's not just, even though I say it's about America, it's about any totalitarian country. It's what can happen to any country, anywhere, what goes on. They even make a point of that where they have a quote which people think is about now. And it turns out it was about Hitler talking about the communists and his country in the 30s. Which just proves that this thing goes on and on and on. Even though you think it's about America, directly about America, at a certain time, it's about fascism and how fascism rears its ugly head and how people go along with it is a big thing. Fascism does not start with just one leader saying we're going to be fascist now. Hallelujah. It didn't start that way. You need the votes of the people to get in power. You need the votes to stay in power. You need the support to say this is a good thing what we're doing. We're going to go in this direction. You need the support of the people, and it's not. And when they say the people, they always just mean there's a vague view of people. Let's not look into it too deeply. Let's not think about it too much. Just say it's the people. Just that's it. The people is this vague thing. This film does not go for that at all. This film is much more specific. And it uses a lot of amateur actors so that they don't have the sheer professionalism. So their rough spots actually make it more lifelike and more brutal. So the Punishment Park is basically, the idea is in Vietnam, the protesters have gone too far for the government. And so they've offered something which is, you can go 3 or 4 days in Punishment Park to avoid having your sentence cancelled. You survive Punishment Park and get to this American flag. So you have to rush to the American flag, the patriotic image, which is always abused. Any flag is always abused for patriotism. And basically it's almost like you have to go through hell to kiss the ring, you know. So you have to do this if you're a protester, and your charges will all be dropped. But you're also going to be hunted down at the time. And basically, if the cops catch you through the park over these 3 or 4 days, you have to give up, and you're taken in the police car, and you go and do your sentence. So it's a very difficult thing to do. Plus, you don't have any water. It's 3 or 4 days in the heat without water. So if you're an older person who rebel against the government, you have no chance. If you're a younger person, you don't much have a chance either. And basically what that does is it breaks down everybody's willpower to be a group dynamic, because the whole thing about the left is about group dynamics, about what helps people. Well, that's the ideal version of it, idealized version of it. That's the thing that motivates people in the first place. There was other stuff you can look into, like communism, the downside of that, which other films look into. I'm not talking about this in this film, but that's the dynamic which they try to break apart. But of course, so it's just a tribe basically of the tribe people, the opposition tribe. Even though they have their own little tribe of people who support themselves, and the cops and the kind of working class people of their own tribe who look down on these, who they see as self-involved, self-pitying, spoiled brats who will not fight for their country. And you basically get the idea is it's not the government who judges someone, it's a group of people who are represented or are plucked in from what are seen as social organisations, but the social organisations that are supported by the government, they are the ones the government approves of. So you get like a labour union, but this labour union is very pro-government, and it's made up of like immigrants who have come in and worked their way up. So they see these people who are rebelling as scum, basically, and unpatriotic. You've got a women's group who want to keep the society in a certain way. You've got like lawyers, you've got these other people who are like pro-military. So it's a whole bunch of conservative people who vote Republican, basically. And it just shows that it's not just a all-encompassing they. It's just that it's a bunch of people with different opinions that you probably don't agree with, but they're going to judge you because you do things that they really disagree with. And it can go from saying things out loud that they don't want to hear to smashing things up or trying to dodge the draft to Vietnam because you don't agree with the Vietnam War. So it's all sorts of things you can get called into. So the structure of the film is basically you see the one group who leaves in the beginning of the film to into Punishment Park because they're the group that's just been through the evaluation, they've all been found guilty. And to them, Punishment Park is not going to be as hard as it turns out to be. Punishment Park is never shown as the hills that it really is in this film until you're there. And so you cut between the people who are going through the park and the people who are getting judged, who are the next group that will go through the park. So basically, what you have is you're cutting in between the people who are being judged by the jury, and these jury just seem to be doing a job, and we're doing the best for our country type of thing. And the actual people who are objecting, saying, look, this is disgusting. So you see, and the people who are objecting, you've got someone who's very much an Abby Hoffman character. You've got a singer who sings songs about the police, and she comes from a rich family, and they're like, how can you? You must disgust your family. And she's like, no, they like me. People say what they think. And you have someone who is trying to dodge the Vietnam War because he doesn't believe in it. He's a pacifist. He feels that this is a right he has, and they're saying, no, that's not a right you have at all, even though legally he does. But because they're saying, would you not fight Hitler and all the rest of it, and they're just offended by the idea of a guy being a pacifist. They're offended by everybody ultimately. They're offended by anybody who does not have their point of view. But they have to try and feel justified morally, so they feel they're always doing a job. So that's what the film shows you, is the actual reality of fascism is people who think they're right, people who think they're doing a good job, and who are judging people for the sin of not being them. Which is the problem of any authoritarian, either on the left or the right. You don't approve of my psychology, my way of doing things. Well, they're just scum. You have to go or be in jail or something. That's just authoritarianism. And that's what the film shows is it's not just authoritarianism as the government does it. The government's made up of people. People do it. People do all this stuff. The people who are the cops do this stuff. So you see the cops hunting down these protesters in Punishment Park. They're driving, the people are walking, having to walk or run, try to hide from them. And the game's rigged. There's no way to do it because even if you get to the flag, there's a line of cops there and make sure you don't get to the flag. There's no way you're getting to the flag. You're not going to Punishment Park. Punishment Park's a rigged game. Also, Punishment Park is in this one we're actually following reporters watching it because it's become a controversial thing because there's Punishment Parks all over the place apparently. It's not just here, it's a system that's going through America. But this is the one that's set in California during the heat. And basically, it's become controversial, so quite a few news teams are reporting on it. So that's why the film is a documentary feel. So it's meant to be some film crews from the BBC, from France, they're all recording the interrogations and the people in the park. So the interrogations are meant to echo the trial of Chicago 7. And it does it in a much better way than the recent Sorkin film. Because you get the black defendant being bound and gagged at a certain point, and it ends up feeling a bit like George Floyd murder towards the end, as he's put the floor and they're really doing him in, and it's like you're getting suddenly a modern context of this has always been happening, this is just the way it is. And obviously they would not do that to the white person. You've also got another black protester who don't do that too because he's too intellectual and he's too well known, but they tell they don't want to do that to him. Because there is a subtle racism going through the surface of these people which they wouldn't admit to. But in the park, people say we're dead. There's no hope, and some of them attack a police car and actually get some guns and shoot one of the policemen. So the hunt becomes much more bloodthirsty, even more than normal, which basically has the people who did it getting shot and hunted down, black or white, they're both dead. And it also means the police suddenly have a sense of fear for retaliation and everyone else, so they're far more brutal about people. And basically that leads to the protesters having to defend themselves against more brutality. And it leads to everyone being nervous, but it leads to that point where the guys that might be arrested, they throw a rock at one of the National Guardsmen. He was only a kid. He accidentally the gun goes off and he shoots one of the men, and suddenly they have to shoot everyone to cover their crime. And it's caught on TV, and the cops are saying, "We don't care." And it's like it becomes a sense of brutality of like the system is, yeah, mistakes are made, but this system's in place for a reason. So it just shows you how a society can go so off the rails. They're willing to actually hunt down their own people, their own citizens, for disagreeing with them, for doing things that they disagree with, for having student riots and have student protests. It's like nowadays we're having the riots again in America, the Trump thing and the Biden thing, but it always comes back at a certain point. Any society, it comes back, and then it comes to the end of the world. From every protest, it's the end of the world now. This is the end of society, and it's like no, it's just it runs up, people get a sense, and it comes back down again. But there's a point where people want changes made to society, and they're willing to put themselves in the line to get changes made. And that's what this is showing. But it's showing the darker side where it goes to fascism, where any country can go to fascism rather than confronting what's the problem. They go so defensive, and they bring in the military and they bring in cops to just say, you have to follow us no matter what. So this is a downside of any kind of authoritarianism in any country. Every country has their cops and has their authoritarians. I mean, any society, you're going to have that element. But it's, do you let it run riot? Or do you have laws in place that says, no, you can't do that, that's illegal. You try and do that, you go to jail yourself. This is when this doesn't happen. Which obviously you have a picture of Nixon in the background to show it. Yeah, he is the face of this horrible situation. So, the film was brutal. The film just looks at fascism and where it comes from, what it is. And as the picture shows, you've been seeing for the last 15 minutes or so, it's brutal. It's utterly brutal. And this shows cops shooting people or beating people up so they surrender, and being utterly horrendous to their own citizens in a way that is basically shows a society going down the toilet. So this was where America was at in the late 60s. They didn't trust their government and they wanted change. And they went on and on into other areas after that. But this is a very good fictional film of what could happen, what was one step beyond where the America was at the time. It was a film that did not get much of a release because there was no non-actors in it. Plus, politically, it was shown off America's been very dubious. This is one of those great protest films in the 60s, 70s that made people very uncomfortable. Like medium cool and all stuff, this kind of sense of everything's corrupt in the media. This is everything's you can't trust anybody ultimately, and it's a wonderful film. It's like 90 minutes long, so it's not a very long film, but it really packs a punch and really has a really complicated arguments because it shows you the reasoning of the people doing it, and it doesn't other them. It's just like these are people you'd know in your town. People like this. This is what they would do if you don't follow what they think is the right way to do it. It just makes it much more terrifying because it's not just Big Brother thing. It's like Big Brother is made up of people who you would know and who want you to conform to their view of things. That's what human beings are like. They like to, and everyone always wants to make out that they're the good guy and other people are the bad guys. And that's what the film shows. Everyone's always saying it's their fault. So the protesters are saying it's their fault for being fascists, and the fascists basically side are saying it's their fault for not having any respect for the country. And it's like it's other than people, and it creates a real issue because there's an inability to actually discuss things. And obviously, the government's ratcheted up so much that it is making victims out of the protesters in a way that is ultimately disgusting. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I'll be back soon with some other ones, but this is an amazing film which I say you have to see. It is so good. You can get it from Eureka if it's not out of print yet, but it's been out for a while from Eureka. It is just wonderful though. It really is wonderful. So I hope you enjoyed this. I'll see you later.